Hey everyone, I'm Luke and today we're diving down the tube of Toons to review the movie Josep. This video is part of our coverage of the Manchester Animation Festival, and today is actually the last day of the festival, but it will not be the last day of our coverage. There's going to be a few more videos stretching into the rest of this week. The Manchester Animation Festival is an annual animation festival taking place on Manchester, and obviously due to everything happening this year, it's taking place online. So this is actually the third and final film we are covering from the festival, and it is a French animated film that debuted earlier this year in France. And as far as I'm aware, I think this is the UK premiere of the film. So what is the film about? So to start off, this film features a framing device featuring a teenage boy in around the modern day who is spending one final day with his grandfather, and his grandfather tells him all about an event that happened in his life just before the start of the Second World War. In 1939, Josep Bartoli was one of many Spaniards who sought refuge in France during Franco's dictatorship. There they were held in concentration camps, and this film highlights that period in Josep Bartoli's life. Josep Bartoli is of course a renowned international artist, and he is known for a series of sketches that he created whilst in those camps. And the film then goes on to show some likely friendship between Josep, a prisoner in the camp, and a French guard. Now I won't spoil just exactly who the grandfather is in the story, as it isn't actually revealed till later on, although I do think it's kind of clear before the reveal, but I won't spoil it nevertheless. So what did I think? I really enjoyed this film. I mean, it certainly wasn't my favourite of the ones I've covered at the festival, but I did enjoy it nevertheless. I did find it a little slow to start off. I wasn't entirely sure where the film was going. It seemed quite bleak. I do think it was definitely a little bit slow to start off, but I do think once I really got into the film, I started to enjoy it more. And I appreciated the relationship between the two main characters. But there was a lot of setup at the start, and there was a bit of jumping around back and forth in time, and so it definitely took me a while to get into it. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because ultimately once the film was wrapped, I found myself enjoying the story overall. One of the problems I did find with this story was the context of what exactly was going on. I didn't feel was made super clear within the film. I feel like the film does expect you to have a somewhat limited knowledge of what was going on in France and Spain during that time period, and it's just not something that I have a strong knowledge on. I do enjoy history, but it's not something that I do enjoy history, and I know bits and pieces of Europe during that time period, but I think much of my knowledge is overshadowed by the conflict that followed the Second World War. And as such, there were moments in the film where I found myself a little lost as to what exactly was going on. I didn't have the context for it. Certain things were just said and introduced, and I wasn't necessarily completely aware what was happening. Now, I assumed that that was just my limited knowledge, and that a French and a Spanish audience would be a lot more familiar with it. However, I did find it interesting that when I was watching the Q&A, the director of the film actually said that in France it's not something that's talked about a lot, as it's something that the nation seemed to be embarrassed and ashamed of, as they were the ones putting the Spanish in the camp. And then additionally in Spain, it's not something they talk about a lot because it's just a bit of a dark period in their history. And in both countries, again, it's something that is overshadowed by the Second World War. So again, I think even in those countries, although they probably have a stronger awareness of the situation, I don't think they're particularly knowledgeable about it either. And I do think there are one or two points in the film that they just sort of expect you to already know going in. And unfortunately, I was just a little bit lost in those points. It wasn't enough that I wasn't able to follow the story, but some of the larger events that were happening around the two main characters, I just found myself being a little bit oblivious to what was happening. It's not a major negative, because like I said, I was still able to follow the overall story, but there were certain things, certain characters that were introduced that I was just a bit unsure of what exactly was going on in that moment. So I do think it's a shame I wasn't able to have a greater understanding of the film, and it would have been nice if the film maybe explained a few things more, as the director seemed to be quite aware that it's not a topic a lot of people have much knowledge on, but at the same time it's not too bad because I was able to follow the story. Now, the style and the animation is definitely something I wanted to talk about. The character designs and the style of the film was quite messy. I think it was meant to somewhat mimic Josep Bartoli's drawings, and it definitely had a nice aesthetic. But I did find that because it was quite a messy drawing style, that there wasn't a lot of consistency in the characters between different shots. And there were certain moments where I felt like there were characters with similar designs. For instance, a lot of the people in the camp wore similar clothes and had similar hairstyles, and so because of the similarities in the designs and due to the lack of consistency of staying on model, I did find it was a little hard to tell which character was which, only in certain occasions, but I do think it was definitely a negative of that style. In most other instances though, I do think the style of the designs really helped make the film feel raw, really helped with the emotional impact of the film. I think it definitely was able to give us a raw look at the experience of the characters, and it really helped to show the ugly side of the camps and what was happening during France in '39. The animation, however, was something that I did find slightly off-putting. The animation itself is quite blocky and very static. It sometimes felt like I was watching maybe more an animatic of the film as opposed to an actual animation, as characters just moved from pose to pose without any sort of breakdowns or in-betweens to fill in the gaps. It's not like you were looking at a static image, because each of those poses had a boil to them and there was like effects like smoke that was constantly moving, but the characters themselves were not. And I think it's one of those things, like, it's definitely very distracting when a character isn't moving and it's not being animated, and it just feels like a cheap, easy way out, and it can come across as just looking a little lazy sometimes. I mean, I think this is mostly due to budget. I think they definitely wanted to tell a bigger story than maybe they could afford to animate fully, and so they went with this stylistic approach to not really moving the characters much. I think it worked in some scenes better than others. Overall, it's something that I've seen before and I do find it frustrating. It's like, I just want the characters to move. I understand that that costs money, but when it's an entire film, it definitely starts to wear on your patience a little bit. The segments set in the present day were fully animated and were done in a completely different design style, and I definitely certainly enjoyed those moments of the film. But the bulk of the film set in the past did have this almost frustrating quality to it. It's not something that stopped me enjoying the film, but it definitely wasn't a stylistic choice that I was a fan of. I really liked the character of Serge. He was the French guard that befriended Josep and was incredibly nice to him. I liked seeing how he was torn between following his orders and just being a decent person, and seeing him struggle with how he must do some awful acts himself just to sort of blend in so that he would actually be able to stay in his position and help Josep and the other prisoners for a longer period of time. You know, and it was the give and take between, now when I'm not being watched I can help them, but when I am being observed I have to be awful to them, just so that he doesn't get punished himself but also lose that position where he's able to help them. And I do think they did a really good job being able to portray Serge's inner struggle. Overall, I actually really like this film. I know I pointed out a few negatives, and there definitely were things that bothered me. I think if I'd had more context to the film and the animation had been a little bit more consistent, I think I probably would have been able to enjoy the film a bit more from the start. But like I said, overall, once the story really got into itself and I was able to follow what was going on, I really started to enjoy this film. I definitely would recommend it, and I think it's worth a watch. It's something I'm probably not rushing to see again, but I think if you've never seen it before, I think it's a really powerful and important film to see. I know people have said that in France and Spain, it's been sparking a conversation about that time period, as it's not something that's talked about a lot. So I think that's definitely a positive to come out of a film. And yeah, overall, I liked it. I'd recommend it. And that's pretty much everything I've got to say in this film. Now, like I said, today is the last day of the Manchester Animation Festival, but I will be doing some slight more coverage. I'll be going over some of the short films that I've watched, just a selection of some of the ones that I like, and then I will do an overall wrap up of everything that I've watched in the festival that maybe I haven't already talked about, on just the festival as a whole. And then don't worry, when all that's done, I will be getting back to our normal schedule. I've got a review for Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs, which is going to be like my final bit of coverage of the Flintstones 60th anniversary. I've got plenty of Myth Behind the Monsters to come at you. I've got my big Spider-Verse video essay coming out soon. And I know we've had a bit of a time off from it, but I will be going back to the Myth Behind the Monsters. I think once this is done, I'm going to do 2 weeks in a row to try and make it up to you. And we've got a few holiday treats coming along the way as well. So keep on the lookout for that. And to help you do so, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to be notified the next time we dive down the tube of tunes. And if you're feeling up to it, please give the video a like. It really helps the video get seen by more people. Have you guys seen Josep? Does it sound like something you're interested in watching? Let me know down below. I'd love to talk to you about it. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Cheers. Thanks for watching Tube of Tunes. If you want more from the channel, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on, follow us on our socials. Hope you liked it. Cheers.